Welcome to the Revive Presbyterian podcast. Our church is located in Sunnyvale, California, with service at 4 p.m. Our church's mission is new life in Christ for the nations of Silicon Valley. We hope that this message blesses and encourages you today.
Today's scripture reading comes from the book of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God.'" This is the word of the Lord.
All right, let's get into it. Part one, the futility of pursuing and amassing worldly wealth. That's part one, right? The futility of pursuing and amassing worldly wealth. Part two, the Father's pleasure to give us the treasures of the kingdom. And that's it, 2 parts today, okay? Let's go. Part one, the futility of pursuing and amassing worldly wealth. So last week, I gave you this question. So let's go to that slide, and it's this question. If money can buy it, is it really treasure? That's a question I posed to you last week. And really, I'm not the one posing it. It's Jesus. Jesus is challenging this very concept of what we consider to be of tremendous value and of worldly wealth. And that's a question I want to place to you. If you can get it with money, then maybe it's not actually treasure. So let's go to today's passage, Luke 12. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide their inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" That's strange. It's almost like Jesus considered this question annoying. It's practically almost a rude. Jesus answers it almost in a rude way. I think Jesus considers it almost a rude question. It's like, I have better things to do. Now, you guys can go figure that out. But there's more things to think about than, like, if you're going to get enough of the money here, okay? And then he tells this teaching. He said to them, "Take care and be on your guard." That means you have to be aware. You have to be on guard for this. Let me say it a little bit differently. If he says be on guard, that probably means most of us are not on guard. Okay? Be on guard means you're not on guard. So take care and be on guard against all, and I want to emphasize that word, all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. So let me just say a little something about this. What's coveting? It's not a word we really use, we modern, secular type folks here in America. Coveting means to want something that somebody else has. And did you know that that's a sin? And it's not a small sin. Coveting is a 10th commandment. It's a 10th of the 10 commandments. And Jesus says here, you should have a guard against all covetousness. Not some. I would say that most Christians have a sense that we are on guard against some covetousness. So, if you have a friend and they have a really big house, you're like, I don't need a really, really big house. Oh, they want $1 million in their retirement account. I only want $500,000 in their retirement account. So, but then there was something that they have and you really want. So I was, as a young man, I was a poor pastor. And I used to go, that person just wants a Mercedes-Benz. That person has to send their kids to some hotshot college. That person wants the best degrees. I just want to drive a Honda Civic. Not even a new Honda Civic. I will be glad to drive a used Honda Civic and get really good gas mileage and a really reliable car, and I don't have to worry about fixing up my car. And you know what? I would pat myself on the back with that. And so when I watch someone else in the church have a 5-year-old Honda Civic, you know what that's the car I want. I wish I had a car like that. So you know how holy I was? Not at all. Be on your guard against all covetousness. All. When I was 25 or 30 years old, I wish I had heard this message. You know how easy it is to do this? It feels actually practically impossible. In America, we know that murder is a sin, adultery is a sin, stealing is a sin. But nobody thinks coveting is a sin. Coveting is life. What do you mean? It's the whole economy. Almost every ad is built for us to encourage coveting. In fact, we wake up in the morning, first thing we do is covet. We start thinking about other things that other people have. I wish I had that. It gets weird. It's not even just stuff. In the 1990s, I was thinking about examples that are people wouldn't think about. In the 1990s, Jennifer Aniston. Do any of you guys know who Jennifer Aniston is? Who knows who Jennifer Aniston is? Okay, young people, Jennifer Aniston is Rachel in Friends. Okay? If you watch that TV show, which is one of the most popular, successful TV shows of the last several decades. So Jennifer Aniston became one of the most famous women in the world in the 1990s. Okay? And people thought she was gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And then she got this special haircut. She got this haircut, and my wife told me it was a layered cut. I had no idea what that meant. To this day, I still don't know what that means. Okay? She got this thing called the layer haircut. And then you know what happened? Every woman wanted that haircut. Okay? The black women wanted it, the white women wanted it, the Chinese women wanted it. I mean, they all wanted it. It was nuts. Then this haircut just completely went viral and everybody wanted this haircut. I didn't even think it was that nice of a haircut. So I thought it was really weird that all these women wanted this haircut that I didn't think that looked that good on her. You know what that was? I want her hair. Which doesn't just mean I want her hair. I want her coolness. I want her admiration. I want her beauty. I want to be desired like the way she's desired. And if I could just have her hair, so then what do women do? They spent a lot of money to go to the right hair person to get that haircut. Be on guard against all covetousness. That's what Jesus says. And back to that question. If money can buy it, is it actually treasure? Okay? Verse 16. And he told them a parable. For those of you who don't know what a parable is, here's what a parable is. It is an earthly story that has a heavenly meaning. An earthly story, it's a metaphor fundamentally. So we don't know what things are like in heaven or the values of the kingdom of heaven. So Jesus gives us something that we concretely can understand on earth, and then it points to something of heaven. It points to something of the kingdom. So he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, so here's the thing he's going to say. Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, do you do this? Do we do this? Let me say it to you in 21st century way. Where am I going to put all my money? There's too much. I've exceeded the limit for my 401k. I must find a different barn, a different account, a different investment, because I don't want my money being taken away by the government through taxes. I don't want my money to just sit and just make 3% from the bank. I don't know what you get from savings account, but it's probably bad. 3% is actually not bad. But it's not that good either, okay? Because if you could put it somewhere else, maybe you can make better than that. This is what we do. And there's a whole industries for it. You should put your money here. You can put your money here. This will protect you from taxes, etc. And I'm not against that. Okay? There's wisdom to doing all that. And so, quick little tip here. One of the gifts I like to give young people is, personal finance for dummies. So I gave that book to my son. He's not here today, so I'll talk about him. Okay? I gave that book to my son for his 18th birthday, and I'm pretty sure he didn't read it. I'm pretty sure he didn't read it. But today, he's entering into teaching people about investment. And I was like, it would have helped you to read it when you were 18 years old. It might have helped you have picked your career back then, right? So I'm not against that stuff, but this preoccupation, I put your money here, put your money here. I'm going to put my money in this barn or that barn. Just think investment. Think different vehicles. Right? And then what we say is, we don't actually say, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. What we say is, I have plenty of money to retire early. It's the 21st century way. It's the 21st century Silicon Valley way to say the exact same thing. Exact same thing. I could go to somebody in this room and ask you, okay, it could be 20, you might be 22, or 35, or 45, or, whoever, however you're, it's like, okay, would you like to retire tomorrow? Would you like to have enough money and you could retire like now so you don't have to work? And then your life will be happy, right? Everybody wants that. But Jesus says, that's not the way to think. Verse 20. But God said to him, so this is what Jesus says. God says to this person who wants to retire early, because his investments are so full. Fool. That's what God calls this person. Fool. This night your soul is required of you. That means you're going to die soon. Maybe tonight. This night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So, that's a tough word. This isn't SooSang's opinion. I'm telling you, I'm having a real blast preaching this part today. Because you know what? I want to retire early. I'm not immune from the 21st century Silicon Valley amass bigger barns. I think about how much money goes into, the pastor's 401k is called the 403b, okay? I look at my 403b number, and sometimes when I look at it, I'm going, you're just being very, very sensible, SooSang. This week when I was thinking about it, I was thinking maybe I'm a fool. Because that's when God looks at me, does he see a fool? Let me say something that I like to say every now and then. Whatever you are before God is who you are. It doesn't matter what you think you are or what everybody else says you are. Your mommy, your daddy, your neighbors, your professor, your boss, everybody on social media. If they say you're this, but God says you're this, trust me, all the stuff that they say that you are, it doesn't matter at all. What God says you are is what you are. You're not more, you're not less. So think about this question of how we think about our worldly wealth. If when God lets you got the bigger barns, you're a fool. Man, that's a tough word. I was thinking about that this week. I got this little notice from Geneva Benefits. That's the PCAs that they handle our I got this little card saying, you should go check out. We moved everything to Fidelity. So they were basically saying, go look at your 403b. And I was thinking about, am I a fool? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Not rich toward God. So, laying up treasure for yourself. Isn't that really familiar? If you were here last week, let's just read it. So this is the Matthew. Let's go back to next page. Here we go. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. A couple more slides, please. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. There it is again. Laying up for yourselves, investing for yourselves. It's constantly, I'm not against saving. I'm not against investing. I'm not against being a good steward of your money. But where's your focus and your priority? Where's your deep love? Where's your soul rest? Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But, here we go, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to ask you, where is your heart? Wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Where's your heart? Where's your treasure? Please think about that question. It's a supremely important question. Your relationship to money will tell you much about your relationship to God. Your relationship to money will tell you much about your heart. Your relationship to money will tell you much about whether God thinks you're a fool or not. It is not easy. I think I've been repenting about this for decades. There's a fight in my soul over this regularly. I want to ask you, is there a fight in your soul over this? Now, I have a couple things I want to point out before as I was just thinking about this passage, I was thinking about, so many Americans, we just practice covetousness for decades and then we die. That's the American way, right? Are there people I know who've learned this lesson that Jesus has said? They figured out they're a fool, and then their priorities change and their treasure changes. I've met people like this. There's a guy I met at my old church in Philadelphia, this New Life Presbyterian Church of Glance. If you've been in my church, you've heard me talk about this church. I might have mentioned this guy to you. I'm going to mention it, but he's probably in his 50s. He's white. He had been decently successful in a small business, but he wasn't rich. When you saw him dressed very modestly, he drove an old truck. And I asked him when I first met him, he would volunteer to fix up cars and go to women's houses, single women's houses, to fix up things in their house, because he was a really handy guy. And I asked him, what do you do for a living? He said, what I did was I took my money and I bought some really rundown houses in the poor parts of Philadelphia. Philadelphia is you could buy, back then, the housing market was so bad, you could buy a house for $40,000. So he would buy a house for what it cost less than buy a car. He was handy, he would fix it up, and then he would rent it out. And then, from that, he did that multiple times, and then he made a certain kind of income. So how do you spend your days? He goes, well, I actually have a lot of time. Unless a toilet breaks down in Philadelphia, I've got my day. I mostly hang out with my wife, watch her homeschool our daughter, and then when the Mercy team calls me to say, go help the single woman out because her toilet's backed up or she needs something fixed in her house, that's what I like to do. I said, wow. And I asked him, how did you become a Christian? And he said, did you grow up in a Christian house? I said, oh, no, I didn't know Jesus at all. When I was young, I was like everybody else. I wanted to make a gob of money. And I got married, and I never spent time with my wife. And I basically wrecked my marriage. And my kids from my first marriage, they don't talk to me. And I made a bunch of money, but she then left me. I got divorced. And while I was divorced, then somebody invited me to church, and then I got saved. And then as I started piecing my life back together, I realized, let's not do that again. And so here he was. He was in his 50s. He found a woman who I think she also got divorced from her first husband, but she also, like him, had gotten saved after that first divorce. She was about a decade younger than him. He was in his 50s. He was probably in his early 50s. She was probably in her early 40s, and they had a 6-year-old daughter. And she homeschooled that daughter. And both were active in the church. In fact, this guy had a lot of time. If there was a short-term mission trip, he'd go on it. And then he would give a lot of money to it. I met men in the Korean community who were like this too. they're in their 40s and they're in their 50s. And then I watched them be active in the Lord, active for church. We go on Native American ministry, they want to go. I was like, why does this guy in his late 40s want to go? And then as I start talking to them, they'll say, yeah, I was really young. I worked really, really hard. We made a lot of money. I gave my kids all this stuff. They went to this college. They went to that college. And then I asked them this question. I said, is your son and daughter, do they follow Jesus? And then his head would go down and he says, no, they don't. No, they don't. You could tell there's a special pain in his heart because, it took him a while before he figured out that giving his kids everything, all the stuff, wasn't so great. But now, then he got to middle age when he got the house and he got all the good stuff and then his kids grew up and then he got bored because he had achieved all the stuff he wanted to in the world and then he felt empty. And then he's a Christian, so he'd go to church and somewhere at church, then the Holy Spirit lit him up. And he got new purpose. And now he's filled up with the Lord and he loves Jesus and he loves his kingdom, but he has this special pain about his kids. See? I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. It's not like super common, but I've seen it often enough. So let me tell you, as a pastor who's in his early 50s, and I've watched this happen to Korean men. I met Chinese guys that are like this. I met white guys like this. I met people do this. So now, if you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, let me tell you, please learn from those who have learned to put away the foolishness. Okay? Let's go to part 2. The Father's pleasure to give us the treasures of the kingdom. Now, this passage, Luke chapter 12, this is a kind of like the Lucan version of some of the stuff that Jesus teaches in Matthew chapter 6. So some people talk about this as the Sermon on the Plain. Jesus probably taught this multiple times. He doesn't say it exactly the same way. So if you go down this passage, I don't have time to teach you the stuff in the middle, but if you go a little bit later, I'm going to take you to what he says next. So here it goes, verse 29. And do not seek, here we go. Here's the do not lay up. Here we go. And do not seek what you are to eat, what you are to drink, nor be worried. For all the nations of the world, all the ethnos of the world, all the ethnics of the world seek after these things. And your Father knows that you need them. Brothers and sisters, do you believe that? Do you believe that God is your Father and you know that He knows you need them? When my kids were little, they never worried about their next meal or their next clothes. And when we moved houses, they were all happy and excited because they weren't worried about where they were going to sleep because they just knew Dad and Mom has it. Wouldn't it be incredible if we could be adults and be free like that? My kids never had to worry about any of those things. They didn't worry about those things. When they start worrying about those things, I remember a conversation I had with Hudson when he was a senior in high school, and he was worried about tuition for college. And he said, I know, Dad, that you told me that I don't have to worry about it because you said that it's your problem, but I can't help but worry about it. On the one hand, I was proud of him because he was starting to become a man, but on the other hand, it felt me sad. I said, it's not your problem. It's my problem. Wouldn't it be great if we could be like that? Verse 31. Instead, seek His kingdom. And these things will be added to you. And here we go. Fear not. Don't worry. I know this is Silicon Valley. We live inside of money worry, money fear all the time. Money fear, anxiety. If you get poor, if you don't have enough money, then you're embarrassed. You feel shamed. and then you feel like a loser. I know this is how everybody thinks. And then if we can't have certain things, or if we can't make a certain amount of money or something like that, then we feel that everybody will look down upon us. And then guess what? We look down upon us too. But then Jesus says this, fear not. Do not worry, little flock. For it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You know, as I was thinking about this verse, I thought a lot about actually my foster son. A number of you know that Grace and I, we have a foster son. He's 17 years old, and he's from Latin America. And he's been with us almost 18 months now. And he comes from a pretty poor family. And he's like more comfortable now because he's living in our house. And, you know, we have all these desires of things we want to give to our foster son. What we want to give to him is like this big. We want to give him a family. I want to give myself to him as his father. Grace wants to be like a mother to him. We want our children to be his older brothers and sisters. We want to give him this family, God's family. We want to give him wisdom about how to navigate what it means to live inside of America. We want to help him find manhood. We want to help him get a really great job. We want to help him figure out how to be a good husband and to be a good father. And, of course, most of all, to know Jesus and get all the stuff of the kingdom. So things we want to give him is like this big. You know what he's interested in? Things that are about this big. Sometimes I think about it. I think, is it because he comes from a poor Latin American country? Or is it just because he's a teenager today? Maybe he's just a normal teenager today, because when I look at a lot of teenagers today, their face is on the phone like this big, and then they don't even want to figure out how to have a conversation. They don't even want to date or at least he can figure out how to have a girlfriend. In that case, I guess he's a prodigy. Right? So, but like, what he wants is about this big. And one of the things I guess I want to say to you is, you can't make somebody want something more if they only want something small. You hearing what I'm saying? Seek his kingdom and these things will be added to you. Your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Not to give you better hair or a nicer car or to get you, like more money so that you can have more money and better barns, but to give you that kingdom. God is like this. Grace and I, when we talk about this. We wrestle with what it means for us to love Brian unto Jesus. And one of the things that Grace regularly points out is, and I always marvel when Grace says this is probably how God feels about us. I go, it always stings when she says that. Right? As soon as Grace says it, I was like, godly wife, thanks for reminding me that I probably act like an orphan and treat my Heavenly Father and act more like a foster son than his fully son. Let me offer you the gospel this way. Jesus did not die on the cross so you can have your sins forgiven and then you could live a comfortable life in America. Jesus died on the cross to give you the kingdom. He wanted to take the sins where you just loved small things, like an orphan, and instead, he can offer you by grace sonship. So your heart can open up and you could love big things. And then God, who just longs, who can't wait to give you big things. But if your hands are like this and you're like, no, I don't want those big things, it's hard to get big things. Brothers and sisters, I want to ask you to challenge your desires today. To believe the gospel is to desire bigger things. It's actually good. It's strange. The implication of the gospel is to shatter foolish desires and open your hand to bigger things. Verse 33, sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old. Does that feel like guilt? Or does that feel like grace? The blue part, sell your possessions and give to the needy. That's the how, okay? But here's the part, if you don't believe the highlighted part, provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old with a treasure. There it is. There's that word. Treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. Verse 34, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So, I want to close. Let's try to give you one more example of what it could feel like. So, how about you start thinking about, this is my stewardship, this is what the Lord puts over me. Could I possibly challenge myself to think about wanting something bigger that's not just of money? And thus, I might sell something to give more of something that I wouldn't have normally chosen to do. And to give it to someone, give it for someone that it's not going to benefit me. Why am I saying it that way? Because Jesus gave to those of us. Because we cannot benefit him. He didn't give to us for self-interest. He gave to us, to give us and make us rich. So, let me just close with this example. I'm on the newsletter for Real Options. You guys know what Real Options is? It's a Christian Crisis Pregnancy Center that our church does a fundraiser for every year. And I'm told this story. Real Options is committed to helping women and men who have experienced a reproductive loss of any kind. That's the way they put it. Here's what reproductive loss includes: abortion, adoption placement, infertility, miscarriage, and stillbirth. In other words, what they're saying is, we know that there's tremendous pain here in this place. It can affect people, their parents, their family, their friends, and suddenly pop up months, years, and even decades later. So oftentimes, the grief from a reproductive loss can become more tangible even yet during pregnancy. So they tell a story of a woman that they call Amy. That's not her real name, okay? So Amy is 41 years old. She had experienced multiple abortions. She was 4 months pregnant and a mother of 3. Gosh, this lady can get pregnant, can't she? She's 41. She's 4 months pregnant, mother of 3. Amy is currently navigating a challenging relationship. She had initially sought an abortion for this baby and was moments away from proceeding, but chose to walk away from the procedure. At an appointment of one of our medical clinics, Real Options, Amy heard her baby's heartbeat for the first time, and the Real Options clinic team informed her about our Hope support group planned for that evening, and Amy came. And then this woman probably was quite desperate. It's like, I don't know what that means. She's in a challenging relationship. Her boyfriend is unfaithful. I don't know what that means. Her husband hits her. I don't know what that means. But she's in a bad place. And she's about to have a 4th kid. And so then they invited her to something called Rachel's Vineyard Conference. And it's a place where women can go and share of their pains and hear the gospel and be prayed over and washed over with the mercy and forgiveness of Jesus. Do you know this is going on in our city today? This is something that our mercy team is thinking about. Is this a place our mercy team could go and make a difference and serve? Maybe we could be a volunteer at something like this. Is this of interest to you? So, I'm just trying to give you different things. All these men that I told you about before, you know what they end up doing? They start thinking about They used to always want the money for me. And then after they have this realization that all the money isn't really treasure, but Jesus and his kingdom. Oh, there's real riches. Money bags that Jesus calls it. Money bags. He actually calls it money bags that don't wear away. They started, all these men that I talked about, they started seeking an everlasting money bag. And so, in this series, we want to challenge you to rethink your values and rest it on the gospel, on Christ. He wants to give you, oh, so much. And if we could only learn to not be fixated on this. So at this time, I'm going to ask Pastor Young to come up here now and then lead us in a time of responsive prayer.